Hey guys, this is my serial killer podcast. I had a lot of fun making this, and I brought it in a way that you wouldn't quite experience it normally. Let's just leave it at that way. So we're gonna experience this serial killer of Henry Lee Moore in the world of Minecraft. You're probably thinking, Minecraft, how is this gonna work? Well, just tune in. So sit back, maybe lay down, go to sleep. I don't care. But if you're interested, thank you for watching. This is my serial killer podcast. So have fun, guys.
Hello, everyone. Today, we look into the case of Henry Lee Moore, a man who was suspected of multiple brutal murders in the early 1900s. Henry Lee Moore grew up in the United States. Not much is known about his childhood. From what we do know, he seemed to live a pretty normal life on the outside, but he didn't really have many close friends, so he may have been more of a loner. He didn't go to college, and he was also not known to be married or have kids. What stands out about his mysterious life was that he was mostly on the move. He worked as a farm laborer and was mostly moving job to job. When questioned about his whereabouts, many wouldn't have solid answers, so it was hard to track his movements as he was constantly moving and never really had a place to settle down and stay. In the deep hours of the night, Henry would often approach homes, sneakily, quietly, and often never left any marks. Victims were usually inside of their homes, often asleep. There were multiple victims, and in some cases, entire families were killed, which made the crime shocking to communities across the Midwest. These events mostly took place between 1911 and 1912 across several Midwestern states. A key detail to these murders is that an axe was often used as the weapon, which is why these crimes are sometimes linked to the Villisca Axe murders, also famously known as the Axe Murder House. These murders were not pretty, and the scene was often left very shocking for the police to find. However, the killer would leave behind many, many clues, like how close the murders were, how much blood was left behind, and most importantly, left investigators the ability to paint a picture of how these crimes were committed. With night being the time concluded during these murders, no force of entry was found, often leaving the idea that front doors were left unlocked. With the bodies having axe marks as well as furniture having axe marks, investigators easily concluded the axe as the weapon for these killings. They also found that the killer would block mirrors and windows, which was very unusual behavior and was left known as a pattern for these killings. For biological evidence, investigators found a lot of blood at the crime scenes. Although DNA technology did not exist at the time to fully analyze it, for physical evidence, the axe used in some crimes were left behind at the scene. Looking at blood splatter, patterns showed that the attacks and killings were very sudden and often happened at very close range. Moore was actually tried for a different murder and not all of the axe-related cases. He was sent to trial in March of 1913 for the murders of his mother and grandmother, Georgia Moore and Mary Wilson. His defense tried to argue that the amount of evidence was lacking to the murders, while the prosecution tried to argue that witnesses and enough circumstantial evidence connected him to the killings. Many of the community thought Henry was a bit of a weirdo, and many theorized he was the killer to the Villisca Axe murders, along with the murder of his mother and grandmother in March of last year. And after a 4-day trial with 80 jurors present, and after 3 hours of debate, Henry would be sentenced to life imprisonment in 1913. The jury would spare him execution of the death penalty despite the brutal murders. He would serve his time in his Missouri penitentiary. His attorney tried to appeal his case to the Supreme Court, but his request was ultimately denied. Henry Lee Moore would serve 36 years in prison. While in prison, he would keep to himself, still maintaining that quiet lifestyle as he had been much of a loner all of his entire life. Moore would be paroled by Governor Forrest Smith in December of 1949, and in 1956, Henry Lee Moore's sentence was commuted, and ultimately, Henry Lee Moore was a free man. While in prison, a Justice Department agent alleged that Moore was possibly responsible for all of those murder cases in several states, along them being the Villisca Axe murders. Henry Lee Moore would never be fully convicted for those murders. I chose this case for a few reasons. First, it's still mainly unsolved, which makes it very interesting. I mean, who doesn't love an unsolved case, am I right? Second, Henry is sought out to be the man connected to the famous Villisca Axe murder house case. And finally, the identity of the killer is still debated to this day, which keeps the mystery alive. As for our boy Henry Lee Moore, when his sentence was commuted, he was recorded to be living at the Salvation Army Center in St. Louis later that year. His story will end on September 30, 1963, as he would pass away due to heart failure and kidney failure in St. Louis. He was 88 years old.
Shut it off, it's scary. Oh my gosh, wow, you guys actually stayed? Stop it, bro. You'll bring tears to my eyes. No, but seriously, guys, thank you so much for watching. I had a lot of fun filming this with friends, and definitely had a lot of fun editing. But seriously, y'all, that's all, folks. Thanks for watching.